I arrived at my parents' house in Willow Creek carrying my laptop, my notes, and a hope I had rehearsed into something almost believable. The moment I stepped inside, the familiar scent of polished wood and my mother's lavender spray wrapped around me, it felt warm, but not welcoming. Harrison, my father, sat in his leather chair, swirling bourbon as if the glass deserved more attention than his eldest daughter. So my mother, Janet, hovered nearby with the soft smile she used whenever she was preparing to disappoint me gently. Piper was sprawled on the couch, filming a quick video for her followers, barely acknowledging me. I opened my laptop anyway. Dad, Mom, I want to show you the prototype. If I can secure $55,000, I can move into the final build. There are 3 companies ready to pilot it. Harrison did not look up. Eden, it is too risky. Janet touched her necklace. Eyes soft. Sweetheart, you always manage on your own. You are strong enough without us stepping in, Piper muttered. Yeah, Eden always bounces back, without lifting her eyes from her phone. My throat tightened. I am not asking for a handout. I have contracts in writing. All I need. Harrison cut in, voice firm, no. Just that. One word that felt like the echo of my entire childhood. I closed the laptop slowly. I understand. But I did not. Not really. And if you have ever reached for support and found only silence, you will understand what I felt walking out of that house. If Eden's story speaks to you, stay with me. There is more truth ahead than they ever expected me to tell. The night after the pitch, I lay awake in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan turning in slow, uneven circles. Every no from my parents had a familiar weight, and my mind drifted back to the first one that truly stayed with me. I was 16 when I asked for a used Honda, just something to keep me from walking home in the Georgia heat after school. Harrison barely looked up from his newspaper that day. Practical girls do not need flashy things, he said. I remember nodding, pretending it made sense. 6 months later, the backyard was covered in string lights and loud music. Piper squealed as a brand new Jeep Wrangler rolled into the driveway, covered in a giant bow. Relatives clapped, neighbors took pictures. My mother hugged her and whispered, "You deserve this, baby." I stood behind them, holding the stack of plates she had asked me to carry. A few months after that, I tried again. "Mom, there is a coding program at Emory. It is $400. I can cover part of it if Janet shook her head before I finished. You can learn those things online. No need to waste money." 2 weeks later, she was packing Piper's luggage for a $9,000 acting intensive in Los Angeles. "Piper has real talent," she told me with a proud smile. I only said, "I know," lying in my childhood bed years later. I could still hear that Jeep horn echoing through the neighborhood. The applause, the celebrations, and beneath all of it, the quiet place where I kept shrinking so Piper could shine. The next morning, the house felt exactly as it always had, polite, quiet, and full of things no one ever said out loud. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open again, even though I knew better. "Dad," I tried, keeping my voice steady. "If you could just look at the projections, you would see this is not a gamble." Harrison tightened the lid on his travel mug. "Eden, I gave you my answer. It is not just an idea." I pressed. "There are 3 companies ready to sign once the build is complete." Piper walked in mid-sentence, grabbing a muffin. Dad already said no. Why push it? I looked at her. "Because I have worked for this." She shrugged. "Everyone works for something." Janet stepped between us with a practiced smile. "Girls, please, Eden, sweetheart, you have always been the strong one. You do not need us to take this kind of risk." Her tone was gentle, but the message was the same as it had been my entire life. You do not get help. You do not get investment. You do not get chosen. I closed my laptop carefully. Right. I understand. Harrison opened the door to leave and threw one last line over his shoulder. We just want what is best for you. The words landed exactly the way they always did, soft enough to sound caring, sharp enough to cut. 3 months passed before my mother finally called again. I was in my townhouse in Decatur, eating dinner over my keyboard, when her name lit up my phone. Her voice was bright in a way it never was for me. Eden, you will not believe the news. Piper is launching her own luxury event company in Buckhead. I leaned back slowly. She is. What? We are all so excited for her, Janet said. Your father and I refinanced the Willow Creek house so she could get started, and we co-signed a loan, $240,000. It is a real business now. My fork slipped from my hand. You refinanced the house. Of course, she said, as if it were obvious. Piper needs a strong beginning. We leased her a Mercedes GLC for client meetings, and she has the sweetest office suite. Buckhead families expect a certain image. I swallowed hard. You told me my project was too risky. That is different, Janet replied softly. Your work is technical. Piper's field depends on presentation. So you believe in her dream? I asked quietly. We always have, she said. Piper just needs the chance to shine. I stared at the wall above my desk, the paint still chipped from the day I moved in. On the other end of the line, my mother kept talking about Piper's PR coach, her new wardrobe, the launch party they were planning. When she finally paused, I managed to say, I am happy she has your support. Janet brightened. Oh, sweetheart, you know we love you both. I ended the call gently. The apartment fell silent around me. Buckhead dreams had always been hers. Decatur survival had always been mine. After that call, something inside me settled into a cold, steady clarity. If I wanted a future, I would have to build it alone. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers to refinance my small townhouse in Decatur. The banker slid the folder toward me with a polite smile, unaware that my hands shook beneath the table. You sure about this? He asked. Yes, I said. I do not have another option. With the refinance and the $38,000 I had saved from overtime shifts, I finally had enough to begin. It was terrifying. But the fear was mine, not borrowed, not assigned, not dismissed. I rented a tiny office near the old railroad tracks, a place no one would describe as promising. The walls were chipped. The heater clanked every hour. The fluorescent lights flickered like they were tired of trying. But when I unlocked the door that first morning, I felt something I had never felt in Willow Creek. It was mine. Lucas Ford arrived carrying a secondhand monitor under his arm. You really meant it, he said. You're actually doing this. Doing it. I echoed. Now help me keep this place standing. A little later, Emery Bennett walked in with a box of mismatched mugs. If we are going to work 18-hour days, we need caffeine. I laughed for the first time in weeks. The three of us crowded around a dented thrift store table, sketching wireframes and debating features between bites of gas station sandwiches. Every day felt like a marathon Eden coding till my wrists numbed. Lucas hunting down bugs. Emery calling contractors who often hung up the moment they heard startup. Then came the email that crushed us. A regional construction firm, our lifeline, walked away from a pilot they had verbally agreed to. Lucas stared at the screen in disbelief. Emery whispered, "What do we do now?" I could not answer. That night, after they left, I sat alone in the dim office, the sound of distant train horns vibrating through the thin walls. My spreadsheet felt emptier than my bank account. For a long moment, I let my father's voice echo in my mind. Too risky. I closed the laptop. Not this time. I whispered into the quiet. 3 days after the collapse of our biggest lead, I walked into the office expecting more silence, Instead, Lucas spun around in his chair, eyes wide. "Eden, check your email. Now." Emery hovered behind him, clutching her mug with both hands. I opened my laptop, bracing myself for another rejection. But the subject line stopped me. Cold Savannah Construction Group, pilot proposal. I clicked it open. "They want a 6-month trial," I said softly. "They have been following the prototype since winter." Lucas let out a breath that sounded like relief and disbelief mashed together. Emery covered her mouth and whispered, "We are not done." We were not. That afternoon, the three of us sat on the dusty floor eating $10 pizza like it was a victory feast. For the first time in a long time, I felt the ground steady beneath me. But in Willow Creek, the ground was breaking. Piper's events were unraveling double-booked venues, furious brides, staff quitting mid-shift. Her lease went delinquent. Clients demanded refunds she could not pay. The Mercedes was repossessed outside a Buckhead cafe, right in front of her followers. Janet called me that night, her voice trembling. "Your sister is overwhelmed. Everything is falling apart." I listened quietly, my fingers still stained with pizza grease. The rise of Build Flow and the fall of Piper were happening in the same breath, like two stories finally revealing the truth beneath them. The call came just as I wrapped up a meeting about the Savannah pilot. My phone buzzed again and again until I finally answered. Janet's voice trembled the moment she spoke. "Eden, we are behind on payments. The bank is threatening action. If you could send $90,000, we could catch up." I gripped the edge of my desk. $90,000, Mom. That is everything I have." Before she could respond, Harrison's voice cut in, stern, controlled, the same tone he used whenever he wanted obedience. "You are successful now. You can help. Dad, I just refinanced my own place to survive." "I cannot," he spoke over me. "We raised you. We invested in you. It is time you repay the family." A cold shock moved through me. "That townhouse is all I have. Then sell it if you need to," he said. "Family comes first." I pressed my forehead against my hand. "Dad, that home kept me alive. I worked for every inch of it. So you are choosing yourself over us?" His voice sharpened like a blade. "For once," I whispered. "Yes." There was a long, heavy silence before he muttered, "Ungrateful." I ended the call. Moments later, messages from Piper filled my screen. "You are selfish. You owe us. Fix this." I turned my phone face down. The doorbell rang. The doorbell kept ringing fast, urgent, demanding. When I opened it, Harrison, Janet, and Piper stood on my porch as if they had every right to be there. Harrison brushed past me without waiting. "We need to talk." Janet stepped in more softly, wringing her hands. Piper followed last, arms crossed, eyes already accusing. They settled on my small couch, looking uncomfortable in a space built from my sacrifices. Janet began with a trembling voice. "Eden, what happened to Piper's business is not her fault. The market changed, and she just needs time." Harrison leaned forward. "You can help. Sell this townhouse. Use the money to save the family." My jaw tightened. "This place is the reason my company is alive." Piper let out a bitter laugh. "You are doing well. Why is it so hard to help us for once?" For once, I repeated. "I cooked my own meals at 12. I found my own scholarships. I worked night shifts while you flew to California for acting camps." Piper rolled her eyes. "That was different." "Explain the difference," I said. She opened her mouth, then shut it. Harrison cut in. We believed in Piper's potential. She needed support, and I did not. My voice was steady, but something fierce moved beneath it. When I asked for $55,000 with contracts ready to sign, you said it was too risky. But you refinanced the house and co-signed a $240,000 loan for her, Janet whispered. We trusted you to take care of yourself. I nodded slowly. Exactly. You trusted me to survive alone. And you trusted Piper to be saved, no matter what. Janet's eyes filled with tears. So you will let us lose everything? No, I said. I am letting you carry what has always belonged to you. I walked to the door and opened it. Harrison stiffened. Piper glared. Janet cried silently. I am done being your backup plan, I said. They walked out one by one. The latch clicked behind them, soft, but final. 6 months passed quietly after the door closed behind my family. Willow Creek went on without me. Their refinanced house went up for sale. Harrison took early retirement. Janet buried herself in church committees. Piper moved in with friends and posted carefully edited photos that hid more than they showed. Meanwhile, build flow grew. We signed long-term contracts, hired new developers, and moved into a brighter office in Midtown Atlanta. I left my townhouse and rented a small place in Virginia Highlands, a home with a creaking porch and a magnolia tree that bloomed like it had nothing to prove. One cool autumn evening, I found an envelope in my mailbox, no return address. Just my name written in Piper's looping handwriting. Eden. I grew up thinking attention meant love. You grew up thinking love had to be earned. I am sorry. I know I have a lot to fix. If you ever want to talk as sisters, not as the roles Dad decided for us, I am here. Piper. I held the letter for a long time, feeling something in my chest shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. I sat on the porch steps as the magnolia leaves rustled overhead, thinking of how far I had come by choosing myself. If any part of my story echoes something inside you, stay with me. Your voice matters more than you think, and there is still so much more to tell.